I'm Dr. Adnan Siddiqui. I'm the director of CAGE. CAGE is an advocacy organization that deals with abuses in the war on terror. Yeah, I was in surgery. I think it was a Tuesday. And basically, the reason why I sort of remember it very well was because the next day, 12th of September, I was actually flying out to the US. So my brother had rung me up in surgery, which is quite unusual because, everyone knows you don't call me when I'm in surgery. He says, "You ain't going anywhere." And I thought, "What's going on?" He said, "Watch a telly." And I said, "I'm in surgery. I can't watch telly in surgery. I don't know what planet you're on." But he just said that, the Twin Towers have been attacked. And I thought, okay. I mean, for me, initially, I just thought, this sounds like some kind of joke. It didn't sound like something real. But as part of our day, that you go on what are called home visits. So at lunchtime, I went out, and it was all across the radio as I was listening, and I thought, okay, so the initial thought, I didn't actually see obviously the actual footage, but you could hear it, rolling news and everything. So the first thing I thought is, okay, is my trip still on or not? So I rang up British Airways. I said, I've got a trip supposed to be flying out to the States tomorrow. And they said, Dr. Sticky, I'm not quite sure that you're going to be able to do that because America's on a war footing. But we'll tell you in a couple of days' time. So I was supposed to be going out there to teach relief medicine because I was working for an organization called Doctors Worldwide. And one of the things that, as doctors you're doing is that you're trying to how to employ your skills in the field. So we were supposed to be, this sounds even worse, we were going to be in the Appalachian Mountains doing field medicine. Now, can you imagine myself being out there on the 11th of September? I don't think I would have ever come back. So that's why I remember, 9/11, very well. And yes, the trip didn't happen because, as the days went on, British Airways were being very British about it and saying, we're not sure, we're not sure. And then obviously, by the time the course was meant to have been a week, so by the time I got to the weekend, it wasn't happening, and they said, you're just going to get your refund, and that's it. But that's where I was on the 11th of September. Well, thinking about it, initially my thoughts were, that's a lucky escape, because that's the scenario I thought to myself, is that if I'd been in America on the 11th of September, the day before, and I was in the Appalachian Mountains teaching people about relief medicine, how would that have looked? A bearded guy teaching, people about relief medicine. So initially it was a kind of, phew, that was lucky. But then, the impact came into it. I thought, hold on a second, there's a load of stuff that, I've avoided that, but there are other people, relief workers I know, who are going to be in all sorts of places. And that we knew very clearly that this is going to have a life-changing impact on everybody. Um, even my staff, most of my staff are not Muslim. As soon as they see those types of things, there's a kind of automatic gut reaction, which is they start looking you in a way that you just think to yourself, are they looking at me thinking it's you lot? Okay, and in fact, more recently, one of my Irish staff actually said to me that when all the bombs were going off at the time of the Troubles, she said that, when you're, and I've seen the work that you do, she said that one of her staff had actually said to her, is you lot doing this, and actually come out straight with it. So it's not, this is a human reaction that people make those kind of judgments, and they might not say it, and that's a very British thing of just like sort of saying, oh, that's terrible, isn't it? But they're sort of like saying, and it's you lot who did it, okay? But they don't say it. Obviously, I'm the employer, so they might find it very difficult to come out with statements like that. But that definitely you feel that, and you know how it's been post 9/11 is that Muslims sort of feel that they have to apologize for anything that happens in the world is ever done by a Muslim. And I think that's where those type of things, that almost that mindset started to develop, because what's that got to do with any of us? You know, I'm sitting there in the surgery. Even what I'm supposed to be doing on the 12th of September in the US is relief work. Why should I, as a relief worker, feel that somehow I've now become a suspect? You know, other people who are non-Muslim who are doing the work that I was doing, they would be considered to be, oh yes, you're very brave and you're doing stuff in conflict zones, etc. For a Muslim, you're automatically considered a suspect, and that's what we've lived through, you know, for the past 18 years. Guantanamo, I mean, I was following it all along because prior to the training I was supposed to be doing on the 12th of September, one of the projects I was involved with Doctors Worldwide was actually in Afghanistan. So I was in Afghanistan in August. And at that time, I'd done a kind of field visit, checked out the hospitals we were going to be working in, etc., looking at what kind of equipment we needed, what kind of skills we needed. So I had the whole plan there all set up. And in fact, I was supposed to be going out after that to see, okay, can we get this, you know, up and running? And the thing is that as soon as the war on terror was declared, you saw Bush's sort of announcement on the lawn. Basically, we realized, okay, this is going to be a project that's probably not going to be viable because was it about a month later, I think, that they started bombing Afghanistan? So we realized, okay, you know, we put everything in place, hired people, you know, to get everything prepped up for the work that we're going to do. But I had to go back to Pakistan, I think in November, December time, essentially to finish the project, as in just to say close it and dispose of all of our assets and everything, because we realized there's no way, you know, we'd already started to hear that, okay, relief workers, you know, were either being killed or being targeted. And then the first images, you know, like after the invasion of Afghanistan happened, I think it was in January 2002 that you saw the first images. And that's something that really shook me because I suddenly thought to myself, okay, those people that you saw in those orange jumpsuits, you know, you didn't know their names, you couldn't hear them. They were literally kept in that way. You saw those pictures of them where they had their masks on, ear defenders, gloves. There was no way you could actually clarify who they were. And my thoughts at that time was think, if I had been working in Afghanistan at that time, that could have been me. So it was almost like a kind of, okay, I've seen that. I know there were lots of people in Afghanistan who were doing relief work and things like this, but who were those people? Were these the people, as they described, the perpetrators of 9/11? Well, they couldn't have been because those were all dead in New York. But the way it was dressed up is that these were the worst of the worst. But there were people who were caught in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I was in Pakistan at that time to close down the project. And even in those discussions, there was a degree of paranoia because, you know, we would be having these discussions. We'd go out to restaurants to discuss about, okay, how are we going to do these things? And there were people who were looking at you. And actually, if you were a foreigner in Pakistan, okay, even though I'm a Pakistani, they can tell straight away that you're a foreigner because just the way you are, the way you dress and everything like that, I can speak the language. But they know, even from the way you walk, they say, you're from abroad. There's a word they use called bahar kamal, which means you're from outside, aren't you? So the thing is that we knew already there were even bounties that were people were being shopped in. So I thought to myself that we better get out of here because, you know, it's not just about closing down the project. For some person who might suddenly think, you know what, $5,000, you know, just say, by the way, they're these guys who are over here. That's a lot of money. So, you know, Alhamdulillah, we managed to close down the project, got back to the UK. But those images, like I said, of Guantanamo, the detainees first arriving, they really were, like I said, it was something that was inside me, kept thinking, who are those people? You know, because I had a lucky escape. And if I had a lucky escape, that's not, you know, as Muslims, we don't believe that, oh, this is luck. It's qadr. So, okay, there's a purpose behind this. What's this purpose? Do I just suddenly say, Alhamdulillah, you know, give sadaqah and just keep quiet? Or say, actually, I want to know who's behind those masks. I want to know who's in those orange jumpsuits. And that's really where it all started. It took a long time because it was, I think, 2003 in May, in summer, the first time we really had any kind of discussions related to what to do related to detainees. There really wasn't very much work because the amount of propaganda that was out there to say these are the worst of the worst and any kind of thing. In fact, I remember some of the articles that came out straight after seeing those images. It was very kind of, you know, in America they talk about tarring and feathering people, about humiliating people, saying this is what will happen to you if you do this. So the orange jumpsuit was almost like a form of tarring and feathering, you know, Muslims to say, if you try to do anything, whatever your situation is. I mean, the people who are in those jumpsuits, they were entitled to a fair trial, to know what's happening. And in the fullness of time, we've seen that how many, I think there are now 40 left in Guantanamo, how many of those faced a trial? Not one of them. All the people who've been released have been released because they were innocent. They never faced a day in court. The 40 who are left, even they're going through all the machinations that whether they can actually accept the trial because of the torture they went through. So I think that history has vindicated us, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of work to do. And Cage has shown that, you know, we had to go from that time when we were known as cage prisoners to realizing that the war on terror has seeped into so many aspects of our lives. I mean, if I'm thinking back to it, is when I saw the biographies, because we essentially what we did at the beginning was just translate an Arab website. It was an Arabic language website, and just said this is who the prisoners are. And one of the people I looked on there, I thought, actually, I remember seeing this man, who's a Kuwaiti man, when I was in Bosnia many years ago, and this was in the context again of relief work. So that just shows you that, you know, these kind of, you know, you could literally have been there yourself. So when I saw that, I thought to myself, yeah, that man, the last time I saw him was in Croatia, in Zagreb, as the head of, you know, the Kuwaiti humanitarian mission. I thought, okay, so he's there, and how many others are going to be there? People like Muazzam and these who are, you know, the UK detainees. I mean, Muazzam, I'd heard of him. I didn't really know him very well, but the issue is that, you know, they're people. It didn't matter whether they're from, you know, the Philippines or whether they're from the UK or Kuwait. They were still people who'd been caught up in this thing, and no one was hearing their story. The person who I really had a lot of connection to was a journalist, Sami Al Hajj, because one of my friends worked at Al Jazeera, and we knew that he was there, and he was one of the detainees. In fact, they have a very good documentary about him. I think it was Prisoner 345. But anyway, his very much impacted me because we knew he was a journalist. And, you know, if you remember back to that time when the invasion of Afghanistan happened, you had journalists like John Simpson and others turning up there, you know, welcomed as heroes. And then you have journalists like Sami Al Hajj, because he's a Muslim, he is now in an orange jumpsuit being shipped off to Cuba. So, you know, it seemed to be that there were different standards that we all knew these were the case prior to 9/11, but they become almost like institutionalized after 9/11. It's a hard one to say. I mean, of course, it's affected everything, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm still a jobbing GP. You know, I teach 1 day a week, you know, medical students. So really, I'm still doing a fairly ordinary work, which, you know, but the issue that I'd say is that when you talk about how's it impacted, I mean, mashallah, we've got a good team who do the real work. I'm not really doing much of the work. The people who are there, they're doing the work. But on a personal level, what Cage has certainly done, I think there's no question it's made me a better doctor. It's made me a better teacher. It's made me somebody who always looks at the other side and says, okay, how did this happen? And if people then want to Google me, I don't know whether students do Google me or not, but they probably do because that's what they all do. But the feedback that I always get is very good. They say that it's coming to listen to the stories, and it's not. We're not talking about Gitmo. We're not talking about War on Terror, but it's the same way that when I'm talking to patients, you have to hear their story, okay? And it's not us making the story as we think it is. And as doctors, I think that's what I feel that Cage has helped me a lot in, is listen to what people are saying, let them articulate what they're feeling, don't bring your judgments into the sort of thing there, and actually you become more humane. And I think, if we're looking at the strapline of Cage, we're saying is a world without injustice. That's what you need to do. You really need to sort of say, okay, let people say what they feel. If they feel hard done by, aggrieved, they feel that something is unfair, the first thing you've got to do is not say, well, no, I think you're wrong, is let them say what they need to say. And then after that, you can look at how do you rectify that. And I think one of the issues I've always said is that when I used to do the relief work, that I was treating symptoms. So, if people were ill or they were injured or they had any other kind of problems, you patched up their injuries, you gave them food, you gave them shelter. But actually what Cage is looking at, and really it actually goes to the heart of what's happening, is why are those people hungry? Why are those people injured? Why have they got no shelter? So when you start turning that on its head, that's quite revolutionary, because you're really looking at, I want to know why is that happening, rather than just, oh, you're a saintly person because you help these people. Helping is very good, and mashallah, that's going to happen for all time. But ultimately, do you want to make sure there are less of those people who are hungry, ill, sick, oppressed, refugees, whatever the circumstances are? And I think that's why I think Cage's whole mindset and the approach we have has a far greater resonance for so many problems that we see in the world today. It's really, if you don't see what's around you, like I said to you, that as somebody who's aged through the war on terror, I was asked that question earlier, what impact has it had? Well, my kids laugh and they say, oh, Dad, you used to have a black beard. I said, yeah. Um, I could blame them, or I could say that actually 18 years of going through the war on terror makes you get a few gray hairs. So we've had the benefit of seeing how life is impacted. You see it every day. If you don't want to acknowledge it, fine. But when you travel on public transport, see it, say it's sorted. What does that mean? Your whole life has been securitized. Okay. I grew up at a time when the Cold War was happening, where we used to have alerts talking about that if a nuclear bomb drops on us, this is where you are meant to stay, that, like how you survive. We had the IRA bombs. We never had any of this kind of see it, say it, sorted. There's nothing like that. So there was an existential threat. So if you want to sort of say, oh, well, it doesn't affect me. Yes, it does. Because do you want a society where you're looking over your back always and looking at people and looking at your fellow citizens as, or they might be, a problem, or they might be going to drop a bomb here, do this or do that? That never happened in the 70s and 80s. And at that time, that was serious stuff. So I think that it's up to you. If you want to just say, I think society's great, that's fine. Carry on. But actually, if you want to just benefit from looking at history, and most people who've lived through those times will say, this is not a society we want to live in, because superficially it might look like everything's fine, but just that thing of posters up saying shop people in, or the impact of the prevent strategy on literally every aspect of your life, or that, parents are having to think, what are we supposed to be tell our kids? That's never happened before. And I think that's really what you've got to say, is that how does it impact me? Well, yes, people in orange jumpsuits doesn't impact any of us. Didn't even impact me. Okay. But what that does is where you allow states to take over and say, using the power of nightmares to bring everyone on board, saying you should be scared of these people, they're the ones who are causing the problems, when really what you've got to look at is where the problems are coming from. That's what you've got to say to yourself. And if you choose to look the other way, it's your choice. I say that with patients, is if they want to ignore their illnesses, they're welcome to. Okay, I'm not there to force it down their throat, but when the time comes where actually, oh my goodness, this is what's happening, I don't have to go then and say, I told you so. I'll just say, well, you know what? You could have done something about this a year ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. And now we have to help you. So it's either you decide to deal with problems in the early stages, or you leave it till when you're locked up in an orange jumpsuit, wherever else you want to be. Because states like this, and you'll see that, whether it's in China now or any other place, they use the same rhetoric of the war on terror, which is making a threat and then saying that these are the people and these are the ones that you need to target. I don't think we've learned very much from history. And I think that's all I would say, is that when you say, well, how does it impact on others? Just have a read back through history and see that whether we're not just repeating the same things again and again and again. Do you want to do that? I hope not.